I'm Senior Extension Associate with CaRDI, and I want to welcome you to the CaRDI Research Roundtable. This one is co-sponsored by the Polson Institute for Global Development, and I'll let Heidi tell you a little bit more about that. Rod wants me to wave these brochures at you. These are, if you don't know anything about CaRDI, the Community Regional Development Institute, I'll put these on the back table. We will have until about 1 o'clock today. We have a very interesting panel. I'll let Heidi introduce everyone and the topic at large. But in general, what we'd like to do in these venues is show you a little bit of research on a topic, maybe have some input from a practitioner or a policymaker on the topic, and then have a good discussion at the end. So the idea then is to leave a good 20 minutes towards the end at least for discussion. If you have questions during the presentations that can't wait, obviously we want to keep this a dialogue, so please feel free to raise your hand and inject your question. But if it can wait for discussion, that's great. We also have a ton of food, so please feel free to get up and help yourself to more food as we go. We are videotaping the presentation, so there were several people who were unable to come, and if you colleagues, you can let them know that we'll be posting the video to the CaRDI website probably sometime next week. We also have some publications on the general topic of youth attraction and retention, workforce development issues, and we'll provide links on the site next to the video.
Along with the announcement for the symposium next Tuesday. Do you want to mention that?
I'll let you go into that.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's not in my head right now.
Right.
I'm focused on this today. Anyway, so I'm going to introduce Heidi Mouillesseaux-Kunzman, who is my colleague at CaRDI. She's a Senior Extension Associate, and she will introduce the topic at large as well as the other presenters. So thank you all.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, thanks for thank you all for coming. I will just say that we've been thinking about this for a couple of years, and I've been curious about who in this area is interested in this topic. We know that it's certainly a topic of interest out in communities, so it's just exciting to me to see lots of faces here, and I hope you'll chime in. In a few minutes, we'll also give you an opportunity to introduce yourselves because it's important for us to know what your interest is in this is. So my co-speakers are John Sipple, who is a professor in development sociology and also the director for the Center for Rural Schools, and then Hens, who is here with the Genesee County Business Education Alliance. As Robin said, we do want to thank the Polson Institute for supporting some of the research that we're going to share today. And also, so a little bit of background is that my interest in youth retention and attraction personally has stemmed from the Cal's New York State internship program, which I'll talk a little bit later. But part of the research that we'll share and some of the ways that we've come across some of the strategies that we'll talk about today have come from the work of the students that have been part of this program, the community members, and also the hosts. They really helped us get a better sense of what's going on out there. And then the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences and also program sponsors of the internship program have supported that work. So, okay, so we have a sense of who we're talking to. Could you just quickly mention your name and where you're from, so you get a sense of who's out there?
Sure. Ron Hanover from Chicago Social Affairs and Development.
I'm Aaron, I'm the student ILR here.
My name is Fatima. I'm a first year student at Johnson.
John Fish, I'm an independent consultant and former dean of Northern Universities.
Tom Roseski, I'm the Deputy Director of the Rural Schools Association.
Joe McNamara, Board President for Seneca Falls Central School and a member of the Rural Schools Organization.
I'm Nancy Zahler. I'm currently on the town board in the town of Genesee here in Providence County, and formerly was the Director of Youth Services and active in our grid addressing these issues.
Julia Franca, I'm a Social Research Associate here, and I majored in business sociology. They were going with education, so it's kind of my field.
I'm Megan Connolly. I'm Associate Director of the High Road Fellowship, run out of Cornell Trial Extension Office.
And I'm Jean Claren, also with the High Road
Fellowship Program and former director of the Buffalo office of Cornell.
I'm Andy. I'm a first-year Johnson student.
I'm Dale Fink. I'm external liaison director of the Dyson School here at Counts.
Julie Stafford with the Department of Food Science and Cornell Institute for Food Systems.
John, you can introduce yourself.
Young Fink. I'm with a program on the flag demographics.
I'm Mary Jo Dudley. I'm the director of the Cornell Farm Worker Program, which is also one of the programs under the CaRDI umbrella. And we're in our 10th year of doing a summer internship program for students to link with farm workers around the state.
I'm David, Council Communications.
Susan Hoskins. I'm the 4-H STEM program work team co-chair, and I'm in the section of soil and compost.
I'm Susie Barbianis. I'm with the Vestiferger, otherwise known as Broadening Experiences in Scientific Training for PhDs and postdocs here at Cornell to prepare them for the careers they're actually going to get.
I'm Lucy Dean Stockton. I'm a second year in development sociology and professor of students.
Hey.
Hi, I'm Ann Rhodes. I work in the community with Building Bridges Initiative and also with Cornell Cooperative Extension on rural leadership development.
Jason Koski with the Cornell Chronicle and University Photography.
Pat McNally with Environmental Health and Safety here at Cornell. We hire a number of interns for work in the summertime and work studies as well.
I'm the top team, hopefully.
And I'm Kim Fleming, part of the organizational development team with Extension Administration over in Roberts Hall, and one of my responsibilities is working with the internship program for Cornell Cooperative Extension.
Celeste Carmichael. I also work with Cornell Cooperative Extension Administration in organizational development. Worked for many years with the 4-H development program and have responsibilities now working on our system-wide plan of work, and I think this is an issue that's very important.
I'm Rod Howell with Cornell Cooperative Extension and CaRDI.
I'm David Kay with CaRDI Community and Regional Development Institute.
Got everyone? Thank you all very much. Okay, so what we want to talk about is just to set the stage, why is this topic of interest, what's some of the background on that, and then share some of the approaches that we found to youth retention and attraction, and then talk a little bit about framing a solution in your community. So what's going on out there is also important to us to hear from you. Just a little bit of background on where this information that we're sharing today. So some of it's from literature reviews, both scientific, and a lot of the strategy stuff that we'll show is just really Google searches, as silly as that sounds. So some are more tried and true, there's some evaluation stuff, but others are just really starting to come up in the field, and we're just starting to get a sense of what's happening. Interviews with hosts and community members, as I mentioned, with our students in the California State Internship Program. Ongoing conversations, so I feel like we're engaging in these and learning more every day. And then CaRDI has been asked to facilitate some initiatives to help a project in the Southern Tier, which we'll talk about, come together to address youth retention and attraction. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to John, who is going to help set the stage for what the numbers are and what's going on.
Great, thanks for being here today. When you tackle a topic such as this, and you see the audience that shows up to hear about a topic such as this, you get a sense of the interconnected nature of the enterprise. And this is not something that a mayor can do single-handedly, or something that a school principal can do single-handedly, or something a parent can do. This is a broader community network that needs to be in place. And we are learning a lot about this on the fly. And this is something that is a phenomenon that we'll talk about in some degree of detail, that you're all somewhat familiar with a whole variety of different strategies. And we're trying to learn more and more. There's been some research on this, and there's been a lot of speculation and guesswork around this, and we're trying to kind of bring the two together and have today be as much of a jumping off point, a beginning of a conversation, than the end of the conversation, because there's still a lot more we learned about this. I did want to just throw a quick thank you to David for saving us from all that bright sunshine outside. It was so nice. Really appreciate that, with closing the shades. Some useful websites. I always try to give people, I'm a big believer that when you're making your own local decisions, wherever you may be, at a university, at a college, at a village, in a big town, small town, wherever you may reside, the best decisions are those that you make with your own local contextual knowledge, but with access to good quality information. So, and I always have this little clip on a slide I put up, information is better than guesswork. And so I want to really just provide you with some links here to places where there's really good, easily accessible information that I think you'll find very intriguing. And as I often joke, although only half-heartedly, the next party you're at on a Friday night and you break out some of these data tools, you can have a lot of fun. It's actually remarkable what you can learn about your own community, neighboring communities. You can squelch assumptions, you can support assumptions with that, depending on what the data show. So the first one, I'm glad Jan is here. Jan's almost single-handedly responsible for this. The program of applied demography on human ecology is this site that we'll look at first. There's the New York World Schools.org site, which Jan has been very, very helpful with, along with some other folks that I've contracted with. And this is much more particularly school-based information. It's not simply rural, though. And when you create these data sets and create these data tools, it's every bit as easy to do it for the entire state and just single out the rural. So all these data sets here will include information about every county, every school district in the state, with the exception of New York City and a couple of financial data tools for the schools, because New York City finances are kept quite separate from everybody else. It's a different deal. Headwaters is a really wonderful site that you can, again, download your information at the county level and other municipal village. Robin is the expert on the Headwaters site here and speaks about this frequently. A really nice place to get some information. And then this last one, are you familiar with this, Robin?
I'm not.
I discovered this yesterday, just by Googling. I was trying to find, there's a slide you'll see, I wanted to update it, and I couldn't find a direct update to the slide, but I came across this, and it's called the flow map, and I'll try to give you a real quick 20-second view of what that's about. So let me just, real quick, I'm not going to be exhaustive because we don't have the time. I normally would take about an hour to go through the different data tools. We're going to do this in about 3 or 4 minutes. So very quickly, just to give you a little taste, again, the burden of responsibility, if I probably shouldn't put it that way, but it really falls with you. The opportunity resides with you to be able to go to these sites and answer questions of interest to you locally. And again, to squelch rumors about other communities, your own community, and so forth. So if you go to look on this site here, the program applied demography, you've got data on counties and school districts, or just the census. If you look at counties, you've got projections, trends, maps, school districts, projections, trends, and then a budget playground. And so I may actually go to the county site here and look at some of this. Okay. This is what we like to call a population pyramid. This is what you got women, girls on the right, men and boys on the left, age structure 0 to 4-year-olds at the bottom, 5 to 9, 25 to 29, and so forth. And so you get a picture of any given community that you want to look at. This is New York State using 2010 census data. And I mean, the first thing to look at up here, it's much better to be a woman than a man when you're over 75 years old. There's a lot more of them left.
Because you'll be alive.
There are a lot. And so, but you also see a relatively narrow base. It widens up here. The key areas around here. What do adults do between the ages of 25 and 40 that other adults tend not to do? They tend to have kids. Okay, so when you start to think about the future versions of these bars down here as you move across time, you start to look at this area, the prime working area, ages in here, and then your retirees are up here, and of course the little kids are down low. So this is New York State, and if we go back and take a peek at New York State in 1950, okay, you get a slightly different look. All right. Pretty wide base. These are the baby boomers. Okay, so the kids coming out of the post-war. growth of the births there and so forth. And we've got very few up top. And so the ability for society to support that part of the retirees was much different back then than it is now. So what's really interesting though is when we go into specific counties. Does anybody want to put up a county that you're interested in? Let's go Cornell. Tompkins is
Weird.
You know, I'll show you Tompkins. Tompkins is a tough one because we don't have many people and we got a whole lot of students.
John, you can use the percentage of total at the top, and so then you won't have to worry about numbers. Right?
Scale doesn't change.
Yeah, scale doesn't change.
So here's Tompkins, 1950, 1960, 70. And what you're seeing is the growth of the universities, all right, and a relative thinning of the other age groups here. In about 2010. So that's, and Tompkins is odd. And then this is TC3, this is Cornell, this is the college. All right, so let's look at a different one. And so we mentioned Portland County. Okay, so again, if we go back to 1950 or so, and again, you see this, you see the typical bubble coming up, the baby boomers, they're all over the place, they're moving up. But again, it's important to look at to what degree do you have a lot of people in this age group that are going to have kids for the next generation, or how thin is that getting, and trying to support the program later on. The topic today is about youth retention, okay, and recruitment and retention. So it's these age groups in here are really, really important to watch. What happens when kids turn 23, 24, 25? Where are they located? That's so important. Okay? And you get a little sense of how that works. And you can look at any county that you want to look at. So go back up for a second here. You can look for projections.
That's not all we want.
Okay, so projections into the future. If we look up to 2035, 2040, again, you have access. Good chance to go get some food. There are other tools that look at projections in the future. You can, on the rural schools site, you get student, these are populations. On the rural schools site, you go look at students. You can take any particular school district and look at the trajectories over time of kindergartens, first grade, second grade, third grade. This is what bubbles move through. So as far as planning for how fully utilized buildings will be, or not used in terms of community planning. Is really quite useful. There's what's really amongst basic data like this, what's really relevant for the conversation today is the in-migration and the out-migration of kids and adults at different ages. So the rate of inflows and outflows. Nicely done. Nicely done.
Just don't touch it.
So let me go back to this and just show you on this site what this looks like real quick.
John, can I just check an assumption? When you were talking about youth and young people, is it college age that is your particular focus for today?
What our focus is on is the messages kids get when they're 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. A lot of messages that kids get when they're young that will shape their behaviors and choices of where they're going to locate or relocate when they get a chance to be mobile themselves. Sometimes that's when they're 18, sometimes when they're 22, sometimes when they're 27. And so it's that notion that the youth are getting messages from their community, and that these messages need to be thought about carefully because they can have very positive impacts on kids and the future of your community, and they can actually have quite deleterious effects on your local community, depending what that message is. So that's part of our message here. So on this, we have a little tab for data tools. So if you click on this, you can see we've got these trends over here, enrollment issues here, achievement and so forth, that we deal with on that side. And let me take you just one last one. The Census Flows Mapper. All right? And what this does is provide you with a pretty interesting look at where people are coming from that's moving towards your county, moving into your county, and where people have lived in your county, where they're leaving and going to. So again, this doesn't provide you answers on what to do, this data, but these different data sources will provide you with data to motivate action locally, to inform action locally. Do we really know that all our 20 to 30-year-olds are fleeing town, or actually the net gain of that age group and so forth? So if we were to look for...
John, can I address that real quick? The question
Sure.
about the age. I think what they're talking about with the brain drain is when youth enter the workforce. So if that's right after high school, then that would be that. But if they go to college, it doesn't matter where the student goes to college as long as they come back to their local workforce is I think what they're measuring. And I would just add, I think, to that it is a range, and going back to what John said, so I think that's important, probably something we should have defined in the beginning is youth. But I'm thinking like K, maybe even pre-K, all the way up to 35 or 40, which start to think is that youth. But again, some of those decisions and the ways that we're interfacing with young people have impacts that far out, according to some of the research that we're finding now. So it's really a young spectrum.
So I chose Seneca County. You can choose any county you want because it's relatively small and it's not as odd as Tompkins County. Although Tompkins County looks quite interesting on this. And what we see here is the total outbound migration. So when people leave, these are all people of any age, of any employment structure, employment status. When they're leaving from one census time period to the next census time period, they're leaving town, where do they go? And so there's some heavy movement quite locally, and then there's some movement all around the state, there's some movement nationally. This is what we call the outbound traffic. Inbound, when people are moving to Seneca County, where are they coming from? Okay, you see some locals, Long Island movement here. These would be folks probably coming up to college, over Seneca County. Oh, that's true. Yep. Okay, and then you can get a net measurement. And so between 2008 and 2012, so across this 4-year time period, okay, what is going to be net gain or loss of people? And the reds and the oranges are the net gain, okay? Which means, so this is not that this county is a gain, but relative to Seneca County, okay, these Oneida County has a net migration of 35. So meaning there's 35 people net, the inflows minus the outflows, that are coming from this county into Seneca County. Okay? And you go over here, and we're losing people, 147 going the other way, the Rochester area. So, okay? So you get ways to access information that can be quite useful.
In 2006, 2010, I'm pretty sure you can also select certain age groups.
Nicely done, yeah.
You can now go down and choose characteristic. I'm pretty sure.
So let's look at 25 to 29. And again, you can choose. It just takes a second for the data to upload. Refresh. There it goes. Okay. And so the loss of the blues, the gains are here. And so just for the 25 to 29-year-olds, you can start to see where the mobility of people are moving. Okay? So all this data does is show us the numbers and rates at which people are moving into your area or out of your area. We've also looked at this population pyramids. You can see the rates of growth of different age groups. As people get older, this population pyramids shift upwards. And it gives you a chance to predict what kinds of services you may want to provide. It gives you a chance to have a conversation on what services you are providing or not providing, or what kind of networks and relationships you're providing or not providing, that either encourage people to leave or discourage people to leave. Okay? So let me stop with the data tools. We're right on the slides. You can see how you can access those. If you have any trouble accessing any of these or are having trouble finding meaning in these, feel free to give any one of us a call.
You're posting PowerPoint as well?
Yes. Yep. So these sites are really helpful. If you have a Headwater specific site, you have a question, contact Robin. Rural Schools, contact me, probably contact Jan up here. But anyway, any of us can help you.
I would just add to what John's saying. The other thing, and when we do this, when we have a little bit more time, if you actually go to some of those trends, it's really, really interesting what you can see in terms of several upstate communities really shrinking in that base, and it provides, I think, a very nice visual for you to share with your community members. Did you want to talk about this?
Yeah, real quick, this is getting a bit old. This is what I was trying to update. This is between 1995 and 2000. This term that's been coined and shared, and I'm sure you've all heard it, called brain drain. Okay, and everyone talks about upstate New York suffering from brain drain. And what this data, Richard Dietz has done this work, shows nationally where there really are issues of brain drain, meaning the out-migrants the people are leaving faster than they're moving in, okay? And so if we look at just the out-migration, the rate at which people are moving out, the real high ones are up over in these darker states here. In New York State, actually looks okay. The in-migration, we have a high in-migration, the darker the states, and the white states are those with very little in-migration. And then you get the net migration down here, in New York State comes out looking pretty bad. So the story here is that upstate New York, and Richard Dietz talks about this, if everything north of Westchester was a state unto itself, if we just pretend Westchester floated away along with New York City on down, and upstate New York was its own state, that the rate at which people move into upstate New York is ranked 49th out of the 15 states. So the problem is not so much a brain drain where people are leaving at unusually high numbers. People are leaving in regular, pretty typical rates. When people are going up and down. Okay, it's pretty normal rates at which they leave. But the rate at which people move into upstate New York is really extraordinarily low. And when you look at a statewide average for New York State's rate of immigrants, it actually looks okay just because of New York City. And so if you take that downstate part of New York out of the equation, upstate New York really suffers from lack of immigration, which signals a very different problem, and it signals a very different set of solutions that we're going to talk about today. That we think about how can we attract youth, how can we attract 40, 50, 60-year-olds to a community, as opposed to how do we lock in the people who are, this notion that, we can't let these kids leave because we want to keep them here. I'm not an advocate of building a fence around the town to keep all the kids in town. I think that's not quite the answer. And Richard Dietz argues that's not the problem. The problem is the lack of in-migration. It's not the lack of out-migration.
Question?
Sure.
Has anyone done any studies about the effect of climate change on immigration? I know there are a lot of people locally who are doing some pretty serious planning about the next 25 years, 30 years, 50 years of the numbers of people who are going to be moving into Tompkins County because we have water.
I've heard some speculation, although I haven't seen hard studies on the rate at which folks are going to start leaving the Southwest because of the water issues. And moving back up to the Northeast where we don't seem to have water issues up here. What I have seen in studies on is the population decline of upstate New York. Okay, the rate of change of upstate, the rate of change of the population would have been much worse Had it not been for the recession actually helped upstate New York in a population sense by not providing a magnet or an attraction in other states where there are plenty of jobs. Once those jobs dried up, people slowed down the rate at which they're leaving New York State. Yeah.
Just to add to that, it's not a climate change related, but the rate of the population loss in upstate New York, particularly in some rural communities, would have also been much, much worse had it not been for international in-migration into those communities. So authorized or unauthorized immigrants have really helped shore up some of the population bases in those places. So, and have actually, and have a more youthful demographic as well.
David?
I'd just add one other climate little factoid is that probably we wouldn't have lost nearly as much population to the south and southwest if it hadn't been for the invention by the Syracuse-based CaRDI Corporation of air conditioning.
That's true. Very true.
I just want to mention briefly, but also the black population is increasing. So also the black population in rural areas is increasing a little bit, less than Hispanics, not Mexican, but they are increasing. So actually the growth of rural areas is minorities. And the white population keeps declining since 1990.
And if you dig into some of those data tools a little deeper, one, you start to see county-to-county variation, quite a bit of county-to-county variation. It's hard to tell the upstate New York story because the county variation is so great. Plus the details of the population, of age group, as Robin was saying, and of race and ethnic background, language. There's a lot of detail in there that's the newer members of upstate New York are looking quite different from the quote-unquote traditional members of upstate New York. Okay. So there's a group of folks, ironically, David Brown, Scott Sanders, and Max Pfeffer did some work a few years ago trying to get at this issue of what it is that shapes youngsters, and I'll define youngsters about 18 to 19-year-olds, what shapes their beliefs about where they might live in 10 years. Okay, so talk to a bunch of 18-year-olds who have just graduated from high school, and where do they think they're going to be at about the age 26 or 28? Okay, it's all into the details here. Expect age 30. Okay, trying to understand what are the relationships, what are the correlates of these decisions, and so through a bunch of interviews and focus groups, and actually back with a Facebook survey. That's when students of this age actually use Facebook quite a bit. I think they moved on from Facebook back in the time. And what we found was that youngsters have a remarkable sense of their community. They will articulate their sense of the future economic viability of their community. And whether it's accurate or not is another story, but they've got a sense. And they've heard many a story. And most of the stories they're getting are from their peers. Okay? They're not getting the story very much from their teachers. They're not getting the story at all from the businesses. But they're getting a story and it's shaping their views. And so, while most expected to live outside of this region, and this is across the southern tier, that is the population of students who are studying this, most thought they would live outside the region. There is quite a bit of variation. And a key finding on this is if the 18-year-old thought there were adults in the local area that were working in a positive sense to enrich the economy and enrich the community, okay, they were like twice as likely to report they were going to potentially move back to this area. And when they reported that the adults in the community were telling them, no, there's no future here. This is old, or you got to get out of here. They would listen to that, and they would be much less likely to report that they're going to live anywhere near this region of the country when they got older. So again, these messages are really quite strong. So picking up on local economic conditions is a really important aspect. We have another slide. I'm not sure if it's not the cash-out one. Okay, well, let me do that in a second. But this notion that students pay a lot of attention to the economic opportunities or perceived economic opportunities, which is different from the real economic opportunities, and that's one of our messages today. The connections between businesses and these kids were very, very loose, not a tight connection. Okay? The environment, outdoor recreation, the health and welfare of the environment played a big role in this as well. This is a real asset that upstate America is. And then, of course, their perception of the schools and the proximity to the family also mattered quite a bit. So it's all this interplay of these different issues that are at play in this, and we can get you more details. But one of our core messages is kids are making these decisions, okay, at a pretty early age. And whether it's kindergartners when they start to get the message, or 8th graders, or 12th graders when they start to get the messages, we don't really know. But they're receiving messages all the way. And by the time they're 18, they can clearly articulate where they think they want to be down the road. Okay? And we know from other work that when kids articulate that, they're actually more likely to follow that pattern. And so those expectations actually do make a difference.
Switch already. So I'll just add to that. So we're going to share a couple other stories, but you'll start to see these themes throughout these studies. So this was another one that was done by Carr and Cathalis. And they went out to Iowa, and they were really trying to look at what the issue is when the creative class migrates into cities. But they talked to members of graduating class, and they had conversations with community leaders, teachers, and employers. And what they found really kind of shocked to them in the beginning. They categorized the types of young people that were coming and going in the community as stayers, folks who were staying in the community after graduation. They were part of the working class. Achievers were high achievers. They were bound for college. Seekers were folks who were going out to see the world primarily through the military. And then there were also folks who would eventually come back to home. But what they found, and this goes back to what I think is very key, and what John was just saying, is that these messages that we're sending, it wasn't that we were encouraging people to stay in their communities. In fact, it was quite the opposite. When they talked to these young people, the message was, go. In order to be successful, you leave this community and go out into the world. And which is really a very different story that we're trying to reverse this than what we should be saying. And I think another key part is that they were saying that the folks who remain in the community, they weren't putting as many resources into it.
It's a great little section late in the book, right near the end of the book, after they got through the whole study. The authors shared a draft of the book back with the local people in these Iowa towns. And it was the school people, it was the community leaders, and they shared a draft. And as they write, the authors were quite nervous of returning to the community to hear about what they perceived as the criticism of the book. Maybe we got the story wrong. Maybe we got it right, maybe we got it wrong, we're not sure. And they thought they'd be receiving a lot of criticism and complaints, because what they really say is that these rural communities are complicit in the decline of these communities by pushing out the best of brightest. And so they got there and they sat around the table with these community leaders who had read the draft of the book. And they sat down and they were waiting to take their punishment. You know, you really feel all the criticism from the community. And the community said, yeah, we got it. And the school people said, yep, that's right. And the school people said, this is our job. Our job is to identify the best and brightest of human health, get them the heck out of here. Okay? And so this notion of the community leaders are complicit in the decline of the community, and we wrap the most resources around these kids, and we underinvest in these other kids who are going to stay. And that cycles generation to generation, and you get the conclusions of the book.
So just another one, out of the Center for Rural Entrepreneurship in the Midwest, they have done a lot of work on youth retention and attraction, and they have done a survey because they have a part of their program is to actually go out and help communities with youth retention and attraction and developing strategies to make that happen. And so before they've gone into these communities, they've done surveys of high school or junior and senior high school students, and they've actually done a survey of 40,000 kids, and because they've got somebody working with them in a classroom and kids are completing it online, they've had over 90% response rate. So they looked at, again, what is it that you want to do in your future? Where do you want to be and what's your interest in returning home? Their findings were remarkably, as they put it, consistent across all of the locations that they were working with people across the country. One of the big things that they really emphasize is that young people do like where they live and they have an interest in returning. But going back, which I think is again similar with the stuff that we found here through the research at Cornell, they don't see the opportunities at home. And again, one of the things that they put, which I think goes back to the Cathalis work as well, is that they're not asked, they're not engaged. In fact, they're encouraged to go away. So they perceive local adults encouraging them to go elsewhere. So you see, again, these themes running throughout several of these different studies.
Real quick, a study published just this past spring by a friend of ours, Kai Schaffner's colleagues. The Carr and Cathalis story, and there's other stories that have reached similar conclusions, that it was the adults in the community that were really teaching and telling the students the future's elsewhere. You got to get out of here. That didn't sit right with me. Pete's thought that doesn't quite resonate with his own experience in these rural communities. There's a lot of work in rural communities. And so he joined some colleagues and they did this two-part study, a big, broad national survey that the federal government collected data all across the country. And then they matched that with focus groups, interviews with individual kids. And what they found was that, ironically, the top achievers in these rural communities had the greatest affinity, the greatest attachment to their community. Okay? They expressed the strongest desire to stay. They had a lot of success in high school, so this is a community that supported them. They felt good in here. They wanted to stay. And it wasn't, what they found was it was not the messages from the teachers that was pushing them away. It was the local, they call the local fiscal image that was portrayed to these kids that really shaped their decision of where they're going to go next. This is a longitudinal study, so we actually know what these kids, what they were thinking when they were 18 and where they ended up, it was 6 or 7 years later, all in this longitudinal sense. And they found, sure enough, that those kids that were the highest achievers wanted to stay the most of any of the kids, but ended up staying the least. And it did flee, just like the other studies, but more because of what they thought would be the fiscal future of their community. It was the picture of the local economy that really carried the day for them. And that really overpowered the other messages that they were getting that, why don't you stay? You can really be an entrepreneur here. You can really advance this.
So for those of you who are from upstate New York, what's the message that you hear about upstate New York? What else?
You do your mythology of the brain drain.
I can tell you, thinking about it for my kids, and at least way back now, from my own experience, it was go in order to be successful. It's also there are no opportunities, there aren't jobs here. So again, whether that's fact or fiction is another thing, but that's the message that's out there and what.
Because when you speak to businesses, what do they say? We can't find qualified employees. Cornell talks about this all the time. And local companies talk about it. You hear this a lot. And how can both be true? And I think the answer is that they can't both be true.
So just to summarize, part of this is, again, this absence, or at least a perceived absence of economic and social opportunity, and an absence of young people or opportunities for young people to engage meaningfully, to develop connections in their community as part of also what the Center for Entrepreneurship has found. So again, going back to the big piece for me, I think that goes contrary to everything we're trying to do here, is that there's deliberate and intentional efforts to send young people away. Okay, so why does this matter? And again, I'll throw that back out to you. Why are you guys here? What does it matter to you if young people are in your communities? What do they bring to your communities?
Energy.
Energy?
Ideas.
New ideas? What else?
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm? Other thoughts?
New things that have been explored, like sustainability and other core, important things for the future of the community.
A workforce? What about on a practical level? John could show you stats from Hamilton County, what's happening in Hamilton County. If you want, I don't know if you have time or what else, you probably better summarize it. If you can't work, I'll just tell you really tight, so go ahead. Just thinking about
This is what the population pyramid of Hamilton County looks like. There's no economic
The other thing that this age group brings is children. Okay? They tend to procreate and have kids. And there's something very healthy about that for a community. You know you've got more kids that can, when you get this V-shaped population pyramid where there's so few people at the bottom having children, so few people at the bottom paying taxes and generating jobs and so forth, and you're trying to sustain all those people at the top, which is rapidly hurtling towards retirement and the cost of healthcare costs that come with that.
So if you take all of these things into consideration, I want to make the case that although we talk about it in terms of youth retention and attraction or workforce development, this is really a bigger issue of community vitality and sustainability. So when we talk about what sustainable communities, this is a key piece of that overall picture.
If you go back to the previous one, just give me a comment. So when I see all these 5 points, 4 points, it's exactly what is happening with, although it's more numbers, the Hispanic community. Because they are interesting here, the children are teenagers already. They are the ones that can do that. If we open the door for them.
Okay, so if you think about it as this broader issue of sustainability, who is this a concern concern for, and again, it's everybody, it's all of us. It's a concern for, but it's also an opportunity at the same time for all of us. Okay, so what can be done to encourage youth retention and attraction? We just wanted to talk both strategies from the research and some of these that we just talked about, the research that we just showed you, put out some possible strategies, as well as some things, again, that we're seeing and then applied that people are actually doing. So the work out of the Center for Entrepreneurship said ask young people what's important to them. And, you know, what they found in their research is that 64% of that 40,000 that had responded said nobody's really ever asked us what we want for our future. Nobody seems to care what our interests are. Engage young people in social affairs and leadership positions. If you start connecting them to your communities early on, they're going to have a vested interest in staying. They're going to have those connections. Teach entrepreneurship. So part of this, as we think about job creation, if there are no jobs, can we also be creating giving young people opportunities to create their own businesses, which help them stay. Revamp the educational system to invest in kids that don't leave. Provide educational opportunities that enable young people to stay. And then role in business development. But out of all of this, the thing that strikes me as the most important, because there's, I think, a myriad of different strategies, is that you're deliberate and intentional about it. So can I have a wave of hands that are out in the communities? How many of you think that people are being deliberate and intentional about this in your communities? Woohoo! That's why we're inviting you.
Why don't you shut up and say a few words?
But I think part of this is knowing this is an issue, but we're struggling with figuring out how to address it. Okay, so I'm just going to share some ways that at least that I've been thinking about these strategies in practice. So there's happening both individual institutional strategies, so colleges, universities, schools are doing some things, community organizations are doing some things, employers, and then even local governments. Or more national community level governments in Canada. But also there's multi-institutional practices in which all of these organizations are combining their efforts. So one is our Cal's New York State internship program, and again, which has provided some of the research for this. We provide Cal students with career-related opportunities. They're out with their hosts for 32 hours a week, but 8 hours a week of their employment opportunity or their internship opportunity is dedicated to community engagement. So they're out meeting people in the community, building connections, finding about the assets, and hopefully developing some things will maybe keep them or encourage them to return to that area, and if not that area, to think about what it is to be a citizen wherever they land. Eve, I think, will talk a little bit about this, but there's a new food processing technology program out in Genesee County. They have a big food manufacturing base. They've really started to think about how do we have young people in the community connect to this. They've also connected out more broadly to other institutions, but they're focusing on place-based opportunities there. And then the Sandbox at Syracuse University, they have an entrepreneurship development program. They're designed to, again, help encourage business development in the area. Institutional strategies. How many of you have young professional organizations in your area? And so those are folks, again, that are really trying to connect. They've said we're committed to this region. We're going to make a difference here, and they're focused on both meeting and connecting with other young people, but also doing community and economic development activities because they want to see a difference in the community, and they're making that difference happen.
And to what degree is this group, is it 22 to 40-year-olds, do they ever interact with the 14 and 15-year-olds? I mean, that's, again, pushing these messages down much, much earlier than we think about.
Pipeline for Progress was an organization that had been active in the Southern Tier. I'm not sure if they're still active. 40 Below is in the Syracuse area, the Young Professional Group. But they partnered together to create this We Live New York, a Young Professional Leadership Conference. The last one was on the Cornell campus. Rod, do you remember how many people? It was a huge conference. Hundreds of young people came, and it was really focused on we live New York, we love New York, what can we do as leaders to make a difference here? And that was supported by the Students to Workforce for Pipeline for Progress. They have brought together, I think in this case it was some of the top 10% of students in Chemung County to meet with legislative leaders, businesses, and other area organizations before they graduated to high school to just say, hey, we're here, we're opportunities, so when you go away, we understand that you're going to maybe leave, go to college, but we're here if you decide to come back and to, again, build some of those bridges. Employers, there's certainly job shadowing, internships, career fairs. Wegmans is known for their scholarship program. And there's also one of the host organizations that we've worked with the internship program actually have a community service requirement for their new employees. They have a mentor that the new employees go out with. I'm getting my time, so I'm going to run through these more quickly. But I'm also a mentoring program to help connect their new employees to the community. I thought this was really interesting. Canada has a couple of examples where they have actually said this is a priority. They've created a youth engagement minister in Newfoundland and Labrador. They have the next, I'll show you the website so we can move through it quickly, but across the provinces they're doing this. So the programs and services, if you get a chance, check this out. They have actually developed several programs, again, at this level to support youth retention and attraction. So it goes back to this issue of being intentional and deliberate. Education to workforce pipeline. So this is really about increasing or achieving higher education goals that started in Cincinnati and Kentucky, but I think it fits very well as I think STEM opportunities do in some of the ways that communities are coming together. They may have a little bit of a different focus, but they're really primed to support this place-making and connecting young people to their areas. What's really important about this program, and it will lead into where Eve is going to talk about on a more local level, is that it brought together all of these agencies and organizations. I think there was 370 between businesses, local government leaders, schools, and said, what can we do to work together to achieve our goals? They set very specific goals for educational achievement, and one of the things that they emphasize, and have data on this to back it, is that they didn't invest a lot of money. It was just coordinated across these institutions. So I think that's important that when we think about, I don't think we have the money to do this, how do we make this happen? It doesn't necessarily require a lot of money. It's really about thinking in different ways. Okay, I'm going to skip past that. So, Genesee County Business Education Alliance is doing it. Heidi hit the nail on the head when she said this needs to be a deliberate effort to keep our youth in our communities, to give them opportunities. And that's what our organization does. It's a grassroots organization that was started in, I think, 1990. Business community thought that there was a need for it. They wanted to be able to get into the schools and help pass the message along that there are jobs and there are opportunities in our region. And to make sure the students were getting an accurate message. I hear it all the time from the community, there's no jobs here. Well, you know what, I also work with the business members a lot, and they tell me that there are. And if you look in the help wanted, there are always jobs. They just may not be the jobs that people are trained for. So what we do is we help the schools and businesses work together. We create career readiness and workforce development programming, and it is a true partnership. We have business members that pay to be part of the BEA. Our schools, every one of them in Genesee County pays in to the BEA to fund the programs, and both communities really support the programming. We also work with other organizations within the community. I work a lot with the Economic Development Corporation, GCC, the Best Center, and we all work together to identify gaps in training programs and in employment and try to fill them. These are the programs that we run. I'm not going to go over all of them, but like I said, all 8 schools participate in the BEA programming. The BSI committee conference, BSI is Business School Interaction Committee, and that entails, there's one representative from each school district and several business members on that committee. And we used to have monthly meetings. We noticed attendance was dwindling. It's really hard for the teachers to get to the meeting either before school or right after school. So we decided to start doing biannual meetings. So our first one is next week, and we're basically running workshops for the teachers to interact with business members. We do lots of job shadows just to get the kids into the community so they can see what types of jobs are out there. I've noticed kids seem to think of careers as mission price little people. there's doctors and nurses and the postman and, you know, the jobs that they can see. And so we really focus a lot on showing the kids the jobs that they might not know about, because those are probably the jobs they're the best suited for. So we recently brought 25 kids to job shadows at the 911 dispatch center last month. There are a ton of kids that think that they want to be police officers. And so the 911 dispatch center is a nice place for them to see other careers in that career cluster of law enforcement and emergency services. The Western New York Tech Academy is a new program in Genesee County. The PEA helped obtain the grant for that, and we're on the design committee. It's basically it's like a magnet school. It's funded by the P-Tech grant through New York State. It's really exciting. This is the first year. The kids start in 9th grade. They commit to 6 years in the program. At the end of the 6 years, they graduate with a free associate's degree in one of 4 areas. And those are degrees that they can either go right into the workforce with, or they can go on to a bachelor's degree. One of them is in food processing, which is a huge and growing area in Genesee County. We have a couple of really large yogurt plants. We have some other large food processing plants there. And we also have, working with the Economic Development Corporation is handy, because we know about what types of organizations are coming in. They have a stamp park, it's called, which is basically nanotechnology, and they're bringing in nanotechnology companies into that plant soon. So that's our big focus right now, is starting to really make students, teachers, and the community aware of opportunities in nanotechnology. One of our probably most unique programs is we run career exploration summer camps. Last summer we had 220 students come through our camps, middle school age. We have one camp that's for high schoolers, that's the Aviation Adventure Camp, where they actually each got about 20 hours of flying time in various planes and helicopters and vehicles. But most of them are middle school age. They're each career clusters. So we have math science technology camp. Susan actually helps out with that one, which is great. But last summer we had 36 students come through our math science technology camp, and they learned about all sorts of different careers in math science and technology. We have a medical camp, which is phenomenal, because the students spend 2 days learning about all the different careers in the medical field, not just how to be a doctor. But they learned about EMP and EMT. We had a mental health professional come in and talk to me about the mental health field. We had a dentist come in. So they got to really explore different opportunities in that field. We have a culinary camp. We have a animal sciences camp, which I work with Cornell Cooperative Extension on pretty extensively. And that's actually held at our BOCES in the Animal Sciences Department. And the kids actually, that picture up there is a vet neutering a cat in front of kids. So that's one of the things we want to teach them is, every kid that loves animals wants to be a veterinarian, but that might not be the most hands-on or appealing job for them. So we actually have the vet come in and they neuter cats for volunteers for animals. So it helps them, but it also shows the kids that's what vets spend most of their time doing. So if you don't want to see a cat get neutered, you might not want to be a vet. And I always tell the kids, this is the day you can just everybody say, thank God I'm not a cat. So those programs are really exceptional. We are able to offer them to all kids. Genesee County is a pretty depressed area. Most of our schools have over 50% free and reduced lunch kids. So we keep the camps, in the past they've been $45 or less for the week. We do that through a lot of donations, volunteers, sponsorships. I beg, borrow, and steal to run these camps. I'm pretty sure that anybody with caller IDs doesn't answer their phone when I'm calling in the spring. But this summer we're doing it a little differently. We're going to raise the cost a bit, but we're also going to offer reduced rates for children that do qualify for free and reduced lunch. So the kids that truly can't afford to pay more than that won't pay more than that, and the kids that can.
So So what's the reaction to those camps? Are you overflowing with canvases?
Yes.
And everybody wants to do them, or are people
Yeah.
are like, well,
They actually fill up. I got to the point where I can't do enrolling admissions anymore. I have to start enrollment on April 15th. And last year, 2 of the camps were full within a week.
so it's first serve, what's the
Basically, first come, first serve, right? So I let everybody know April 15th is the day. If you really want to be in these camps, you need to register that day. Last year, we actually ran 2 extra weeks of camps so that we didn't have to turn any kids away.
What's the age range?
The age range is 7th through 8th grade. I'm sorry, 6th through 8th grade.
Do you know the socioeconomic background of the families of the kids who are coming? I wonder if you're disproportionately servicing wealthier families, and are the poor families actually sending their kids?
Yeah, actually, it's I'd say, pretty good mix. We haven't taken demographics on that, but just knowing the families and knowing the kids, it's very small. We live in a very small community. It's probably a nice cross section. Something we do is I provide lunch at all of the camps, even if they're a half day, because I know that some kids probably wouldn't get lunch when they got home, and I feel like if I have them, I'm feeding them. So we do provide lunch every day, even for the half day camps, for that reason. So like I said, Genesee County it's a pretty depressed area. I would say that most of the kids that do come from a lower socioeconomic background are probably from the city of Batavia, because the camps are in Batavia, so it's easier for them to get there. A couple years ago, I did have an agreement with one of the rec programs that they would bus kids to the camp, and I actually gave away some admission, I had a couple extra spots. I gave some spots to a couple of kids for free, and their parents wouldn't bring them to the bus. So transportation is sometimes an issue, unfortunately.
Are you planning any long-term studies to look at how the camp might influence their career selections?
Yeah, I'd really like to. I've been there 4 years now, so it probably would be good timing maybe next year for me to start surveying some of the kids that are choosing which colleges to go to and what's major. I know informally I've talked to some kids, and I have to say, to me it's a bigger success to hear a kid say, I went to vet camp and I found out I really don't want to do that. To me, that's a bigger success than having them say, like, I loved it, because I just saved someone a lot of tuition. So, one of the things I didn't mention is when we do these camps, we have members from the business community come in and teach the segments. So the kids are getting exposure to people that do these jobs in real life. So they, I think, get a really good view of what their opportunities are in those fields.
Do you guys have minority students coming to those camps?
Do we what?
Minority students?
Yes.
Those camps?
Yeah. Definitely. Oh, and 2 of the days we do tours, where we just go out and do tours of different businesses throughout Genesee County. And I try to really mix it up. They go to a farm, they go to a chocolate factory, they go to a shoe factory, they go to pizza place and make their own pizza for lunch. So I try to really kind of mix it up and give them a good tour. This is our funding. As Heidi said, it doesn't take a lot of money to run these programs. It just takes a lot of coercing. Our business members pay in about 14% of our annual budget. Our schools pay about 14%. With the schools, I want to let you know that is, we run it through a poster. I'm actually a BOCES employee, so the schools pay BOCES. BOCES pays my salary with that income, and then the schools are reimbursed almost 80% from the state. So it really helps.
Is this the funding for the whole array of activities that you're describing, or just the summer camp?
Oh, I wish that was the summer camps. No, that's everything. We run on a shoestring. So that's the state aid right here, is through that coaster. So this is what the schools end up paying, and this is what the state aid pays in.
Genesee County gives us a small percentage. We do have, this is miscellaneous program income, that's tuition that people pay for the camps, sponsorships that I can bring in, that sort of thing. And something I do need to mention is that Chamber of Commerce supplies me my office space, my office supplies, all of the utilities, all of that. So, the business community really supports this endeavor. I mean, it really has to be a partnership, which brings me to my next point. In our BOCES, there are 3 BEAs. There's one in Genesee County, one in Wyoming County, one in Livingston County. As far as I know, I don't think there are any others within the state. And there's a need for them. I think that, there's so many business members that want to be involved, that want to help out with the schools. The schools are losing funding. As you all know, our rural schools are hurting. They don't have the funding to have multiple business teachers to teach some of these programs within the schools. They don't have the funding for field trips. And the BEA really takes up the slack on a lot of those programs. Like I tell the schools, it's basically like hiring a consultant. And I bring in people to do mock interviews. I bring in classroom speakers. I set up field trips for the schools so they don't have to devote teacher time to setting those up. We've created virtual video tours so that we can bring the field trips into the school instead of bringing the school to the field trip. So as the state funding for schools keeps decreasing, especially our rural schools it's so inequitable, the funding. Programs like these become more and more important.
And how many schools are participating?
In my county, all 8.
All 8. So you take that 14%, which is only $7,000,
Yeah.
and divide it 8 ways, and we're talking little bits.
Yeah,
Little.
you're paying less than $1,000 a year.
And the county's paying $3,500.
Right.
Does the county core make it more or less possible for teachers to enable the students to
Well,
participate?
this actually helps the teachers meet the Common Core standards because, one of the CDOT standards is to help kids become career and college ready. The career ready is tough for the teachers to fit into their class time, and so we help with that. One of the largest programs we run is Junior Achievement, which, is a statewide program. We run it through the BEA, so I find the volunteers for the teachers, I order the kits, I set all of that up. We've already run, I think, 5 high school programs this fall in our schools. We have 4 teams going to the Stock Market Challenge, which is next week. And the schools save 1/3 of the cost because the BEA is running it rather than having it go directly through Junior Achievement. But Junior Achievement is constantly revamping their programs to make sure that they fit into the core curriculums and that we're helping the teachers not taking time away from their schedules. So how does this retain our workforce? First of all, we create an awareness of jobs and careers that are available locally. Last summer, we ran a construction camp for the first time. I don't know how it is statewide, but I know in Genesee County, and I think this is probably nationwide, the skilled trades are desperate for people to come into them. And these aren't low-paying, unskilled labor jobs. These can be some really lucrative careers. The youngest plumber in Genesee County is 57 years old. Let's figure that one out.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. And I know that he's our plumber. He's been trying to get an apprentice for years. The kids that come out of building trades tend to, because they're so well-rounded and so well-trained, they're snapped up immediately by construction firms. So this poor guy, he's 57, he wants to retire. He works probably 80 hours a week, and he cannot find an apprentice.
And he's probably making $90,000 to $100,000 a year.
He's raking it in.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to anymore. So yeah, he's making some good money. So, we're trying to help our kids become aware of these jobs that are available locally. We have a lot of manufacturing in Genesee County. And I recently met with 2 of the manufacturers that do tool and die. They're using machinists. You have to be trained to be a machinist. You can't just walk in the door and use those tools. They said they always have about 5 positions advertised that they can't fill. They have adults walk in desperate for a job, but they're not trained. So the training programs are there, but it's a matter of connecting the student to that career pathway that gives them a career that they will enjoy, that will pay them well, and that is available locally. And finally, the other piece of that is we're ensuring that we have students who are graduating from high school, college, and career ready with a plan. It's really hard to teach soft skills in school. Some of our business members will tell you that one of the business members said it pretty well last week. It has to come from your mom's lap. But I disagree with that. I think you can teach the soft skills in school. Our teachers are so overloaded and so busy, and so they have so many other things that they get graded on that they have to do that they sometimes don't have the time to integrate that into their programs. That's where the business members come in. When a business member comes in and they're dressed appropriately and they look at a child and they shake a kid's hand and say, "Nice to meet you," that teaches the kids something. When you do mock interviews, and the student, we just did mock interviews with a class of 5th graders. Now, one of the interviewers said, "That seems really young," and I'm like, it's really not, because the earlier the kids are exposed to experiences like that, the more normal it becomes. Those kids, if they continue doing mock interviews through junior high and through high school, by the time they have to go to interview with a college or with an employer, it's going to be all that. They're going to know how to dress appropriately. They're going to know how to enter a room. They're going to know how to introduce themselves. And they're going to have a good interview. So that is the other piece of this. Plus, the employers know what they need. They know what they're looking for. They're looking for workers who have a good work ethic, who know how to be on time, who have some people skills, who have teamwork skills. And, it's just as good for the teachers to hear those things as it is for the students, because sometimes it's hard to remember all of the things that you need to try and incorporate into the class. Any questions? And I guess I just want to leave you with this. Like I said, these programs aren't expensive. They're, I think, hard to put in place initially because it does have to be a partnership. It has to be the business community and the school community coming together and really working together to establish this. And in our BOCES region, all 3 counties do have a BEA because precedent was set, and we were able to duplicate that in our other 2 counties. So I guess my question is how do we bring this to other communities? How do we bring this programming to Tompkins County or any of the other counties in New York State that could really utilize this programming? So that is my question to the people.
I can get you invited to coffee. I can get you invited to Portland, because I was just thinking of a principal over there who would be with Joan on this.
Yeah. And I would love to bring this to other communities because, it's not just Genesee County that's so big. I'm so happy to hear from the girls' school.
Our rural Catholic schools happens in July. We have presentations, so we might be able to work with you on that.
Why don't we thank our presenters? Questions? I mean, we're at time, but those of you that are able to stay for, if we have a few questions to any of our presenters or comments.
Is there a component to guard against these kids sort of seeing the careers they go into, but gosh, we'd still like to go off to a big city? And how do you sort of component to say, this is really that place to live, now that you know you can actually
We haven't really addressed that component of it, no. I think that we just try to really expose them to as many opportunities and options as we can. And, I think that there are always going to be kids that move away, I guess, but we're just going to give them reasons to stay.
Regarding that, I've talked to a number of communities with their local foundations to develop youth leadership programs in the schools. And you get kids at a young age and involve them with foundation work, that's leadership sponsored families together, while with a dynamic way they're really feel very interested in
And I think we know from broader work and other literature that when you form these strong relationships and these connections, and then the kids do leave, they go off to college, it's very natural. We lose students, we lose that age group at very little range, which means a lot of them do leave. They have that sense that there's a future in that community, and they have connections there, they've already pictured themselves in that community. So that those kinds of relationships are really
My daughter is a college in my own state, and that's exactly what I said. Go, leave, have fun, explore, come back. So,
I think it's also a matter of, so it's not leaving by default.
Right.
So that, again, you know that you're choosing to go away, but you know that you have options as opposed to just thinking again, John, get the heck out of here, right?
So in the beginning of the presentation, we said that a big part of the cultural attraction was not that New York was using people at a much faster rate than other states, but that they were more trouble attracting people. So what about programs in cities and suburbs to get people to move to their own business? Like,
I think that's a good idea. I'm not familiar with those strategies, but I mean, I think it's partially, well, I see this as part of this whole broader revitalization effort so that we can start changing the narrative so that people do understand there's jobs and that there's opportunities and that people are staying committed and sharing those stories, which also then leads other people to start seeing that change.
Well, I would address that. I think that there have been some programs about attracting new people into cities. I mean, look at Pittsburgh. There was a great article, I don't know, in the New York Times or something, a couple of years ago about how there's a huge renaissance in Pittsburgh. And certainly some of the things that we've tried with the Cal's New York State internship programs, that even if the students that we place in those communities for summer don't end up living there, the community engagement projects that they're engaged in are not just strengthening the vitality of the community for the members there, but hopefully showcasing it for visitors and raising the profile for new people to move there. So I think there's sort of this cycle, it's iterative, it's, you know, it's not just one way.
Well, the program really resonates with my research. So I'm in Tara and I work in Cornell. And my project is immigrant integration. And I should now say immigrant integration and retention, right? But anyhow, the problem that I found is, because I asked you, do you have minorities in this program? You said yes, very good. The problem that I found through organizations or initiatives that are trying to work with youth is that it's very hard to attract them, and it's very hard. They don't come. They don't know how to teach them. They are assigned poor people with the same value, transportation. Right? So it's the same thing. However, poor white people go, but poor Hispanic people. So what was it? So that's my research, trying to figure out and give guidance to agencies how to do the outreach. But this is the challenge, right? Because the ones that are there, having kids, staying there, and staying for a long time.
And the transportation is so difficult because, like I said, even when I give away enrollment at times, then the parent won't, you know, I actually called this one child because he wasn't at the camp and the bus had come, and I said, you know, give a hard time, and he said my mom wouldn't bring me to the bus.
So I found two things. The immigrants go if they trust the place. So churches and schools, which is interesting. And then the next question is, how did you attract them?
Well, I didn't specifically market to minorities, but you know, you touched on something. You said they tend to trust churches and schools. A lot of my programming is called at Mouillesseaux Center in Batavia, so it's a school.
Yeah.
So and we advertise through the schools. I actually go to all of the schools before the sign-up date and pass out flyers. And so the sign-ups are through the schools, and so that could be why people feel comfortable coming to the campus, because it's through organizations they already trust.
Well,